Touchdown, Chargers!
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by the voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith. Super Bowl week. Don't really want to talk about the game, Money. Eagles, Chiefs, right? We didn't want this matchup.
I mean, no. This is the matchup that we got. The matchup we wanted. Commanders, Bills is not what it ended up being. But you know what? You think back to I was thinking about this. You think back to that last Super Bowl and what a great Super Bowl it was a couple years ago. And then I remember the way it ended with the penalty. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. It was a 3rd and 8, and the Eagles might have had an opportunity to win that game. But no, there's a flag, and now the Chiefs win. So, yes, it was, again, just remarkable. I saw a funny tweet earlier today that said, yes, Mr. Bookmaker, I would like to take the money line and the Eagles for the first 58 minutes of the game. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much, we know how this is going to go.
That's what's going to happen. And, you know, the Chargers have to deal with this Kansas City Chiefs team who is on the verge of a three-peat. And we asked for questions. We got like 40 questions. So I don't know if we'll get to
Let's
all
start
of
burning,
them,
man.
but
Let's
we should
go.
start burning through them. A lot to do with just the rumors out there with free agency and the draft and how the Chargers could eventually surpass those Chiefs. But let's just start with some of the big news this week. You know, Myles Garrett requested a trade.
Yeah.
So I think that means all 31 teams are interested. This is from Bandar. Would you let go of Mack and Bosa to get Myles Garrett? And then number 2, is our cap space enough for Slater new contract plus Myles Garrett plus T. Higgins? So first of all, a lot of T. Higgins and Myles Garrett rumor questions.
Let's just hit those.
Let's just hit those now.
Yeah. So one, to answer the question about cap, absolutely. They've got plenty of room for all those guys, for Garrett, for Higgins, for Slater, and then some. Remember, you can build a contract however you want. It's, you can front load it, you can back load it, you can do a bigger signing bonus. You can do guarantees that are easily attained that help you massage that. You can rework contracts to lower their numbers that are already on the books. So there's a million ways to get around that. But just the simple answer to that is, yeah, they could totally absorb, 3 salaries in the average, annual average of $28 to $31 million, which is what you're talking about with Garrett, Slater, and Higgins, and be fine because the first year is not going to be $31 million. That's not how it works. They're backloaded, and the idea is you're either going to you're going to restructure, you're going to redo a deal, all of those sort of things to make it all work when you kick it down the road. So that's number 1. 2, to the Myles Garrett question, yeah, he's the best defensive player in football. Yeah. So you said it, Chris. All 31 teams are going to line up. I would assume, I heard our friend DJ. And it's funny, I was thinking the exact same thing as I was listening to his pod, because the good news for a team like the Chargers, I don't think the Browns want capital for 25. It's not a quarterback draft. So I could totally see them. If Abdul Carter's there, take him. Travis Hunter, take him. T-Mac, take him. I mean, there's a number of ways they could go. Mason Graham, and load up for next year. Like, they want next year, because next year – Arch Manning, you're talking about a quarterback draft. So Chargers could still keep their one this year, offer up future 2026, 1, and however, if it's 1-1, if it's 2 1s, if it's a 1 and 2, something like that, it lines up. So, and then the third part of it, would you get rid of Mack and Bosa? I don't think those two things are necessarily joined together. I think Mack, they definitely want him back. So see if they can make that work. And Bosa, is right now a $36 million number. That's something that's going to have to get figured out.
Yep. Andrew Berry is playing it right. Whether or not he wants to let go of Myles Garrett, he says he doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So that means that the price is going to go up. And for some reason, I don't know if the Browns are really going to trade him in the conference. I think if he goes anywhere, it may be the NFC, and it's going to be a lot of picks. And there's just other teams with ammunition that I think may be superior to the Chargers in terms of capital. Listen, you can give up anything. I mean, you could kick picks down the road. I'd love to see Myles Garrett in powder blue.
No doubt.
I just don't know the likelihood of that happening when you see other teams in the conference, or in the NFC rather, that may have more cap space, that may have more picks to give. And at that point, it's like, all right, well, what does Cleveland do? I agree with you, though. I do think that they need to punt on this year If they draft Abdul Carter in the top 3, there's your Myles Garrett to
he's
replace.
Micah Parsons clone.
But I just don't know where Myles Garrett is going to go. I would think the NFC would be the more likely landing spot. No,
I think to me it's not going to be in division. Like it's not going to be Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, right? If you're just trading him in conference, think about the Chiefs trading Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins. It's like, okay, we might see you in the playoffs. We might see you, once every few years. It's not as big of a deal.
It's the best deal.
Yeah, and so I think it's who's going to come up. And that's where the question comes in. If you're a team like Detroit and you feel like you're a piece away, and it's like if we can pair Aiden Hutchinson with Myles Garrett to go with our offense and all of these weapons and Jahmyr Gibbs and St. Brown and Laporte in this offensive line, and like they may just give up 3 ones or something like that. So to me, that's the bigger competition is what is someone willing to give up for someone who clearly has demonstrated, man, he plays football unlike 99% of the people in the league. He is a true difference maker.
Yeah. Let's keep this theme going, and I'm going to just kind of bundle some questions together. Power Goa, is Cooper Kupp an option? Richard, do you think we land DK and Higgins or just one of them? Okay. So just to kind of to put a button on the wide receiver rumors. First of all, Cooper Kupp, I think there's a reason why the Rams are trading him, because they think he's lost a step and he's got a pretty big cap number. So I don't think that they're going to be able to just straight up trade him. They're going to have to pay some of this salary. And at that point, I'd prefer to have Keenan Allen over Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
As far as T. Higgins is concerned, that's another guy who there's 5 or 6 teams in the league that are wide receiver desperate with a lot of cap space. I don't know if the Chargers are one of those teams that's going to pay $30 million for T. Higgins. I could be wrong. I just don't know if that's going to be realistic. I think a DK Metcalf trade or a Tyreek Hill trade or a trade of a veteran that has maybe a smaller cap number, a little bit of a smaller cap number with a couple years left, may be the more realistic avenue, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Sure, yeah. So Popper and I got into this last week pretty extensively, and we both, for lack of a better term, just, got ear-to-ear grins when it comes to T. Higgins. He's too perfect. Yeah. He's young. He is the exact piece that would fit into this wide receiver room where Lattice in the slot, T is your X. Now Q can be your Z. Q is never your downfield 50-50 guy because T is one of the best in the league at that, so you have that. And Q can get back to doing what he's really good at, and that's, using him in motion and those quick hitters and those slants and, the things that really he excelled at all season long, as opposed to asking him to kind of, fit into, to drive in a lane that's not necessarily a strength when he has other strengths. T. Higgins is that guy. He can beat press. He's fast. He is a nightmare for defensive backs because he's a giant. I mean, he is a massive human being, and he's 25. So, that's the other thing. Cooper Kupp is on the other side of 30. Tyreek Hill is on the other side of 30. Situation with DK is, and here's the thing with T, is he can choose the Chargers. The Seahawks have power over where DK goes because it's going to have to come with with the right package. So the same thing with Tyreek, that's a trade. So you now have to give up assets, draft capital to go get them. The team has to be willing to engage with you. T is just, I want to win a Super Bowl. I've been catching passes from Joe Burrow. I'm going to go catch him from Justin Herbert. I saw what he and Mike Williams did in those downfield balls, and I got Ladd McConkey running underneath and dealing. They got to deal with him in the slot. So you can't double both of us. It could lead, so that's the thing about T. As far as DK goes, he'll probably want an extension. Yeah. So he's going into the last year of his deal. So when you trade for him, you're also going to now have that conversation of what would you pay T. Higgins versus what are you willing to pay DK Metcalf, and how does all of that line up? But if, and if those two things don't work out, the thing with Cooper Kupp is, he works out of the slot. That's what he does. He's a big slot, like Keenan was, a big slot, and that's kind of where you're at. And you're talking about someone who has missed a lot of games and feels like he's, a pretty good distance away from the Triple Crown year of 2021.
Yeah. If T. Higgins is available, would you pay him $30 million?
Whatever he wants.
Yeah?
Yeah. To me, that's my That would be my absolute number one priority, because it changes everything. It sets everything up. You cannot crowd the box with him. Because look what they did to Ladd in the Houston game. Like when you think about Ladd and how effective he became once he really hit his stride, and teams were just committing all these resources to him because they knew they didn't feel they had to really commit resources anywhere else. It's like, we've got to stop this guy. So now imagine Ladd with none of that ever, because you can't do it with T. You can't. He will torch one-on-one coverage. So all of that falls into place. If that's the guy that you sign. So to me, it would be my after Rashawn Slater gets his extension squared away, next in line would be T. Higgins. And then look, again, T's got 31 other teams that he can choose, and that may not line up. Nothing against Joe Hortiz and the Chargers if they don't land him, but I would imagine they're looking at that and saying, the exact same thing. Like, let's figure out a way. And look, Cincinnati may just give him another franchise tag and say, screw it, we're going to eat it.
Well, see, that's what Burrow was on First Take this morning and said that we need to find a way to keep everybody.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done, especially if you're the Bengals and you have Jamar Chase, who's going to have to –
He's going to make $35 million.
He's going to be the best. Yeah, the highest paid receiver in football.
Yeah.
So how can you give two guys a similar?
Let's hope they can.
It's possible.
Let's just hope they can.
Yeah.
But they're going to try.
Yeah.
Because that's the Cincinnati offense. That's what it is. It's, when you think about when it was Boyd, Higgins, and Chase, they were unstoppable, and that's kind of the vision that I have. With think about what that looked like when you put Higgins here. Well, now it's Higgins, McConkey, and Q, and you can get there. You can get to a similar place.
It goes to that 5-year window that they had with all those guys on rookie contracts, right? They got to a Super Bowl because of it, and then how quickly things change with economics, and now I don't think there's any possible way that T. Higgins goes back to Cincinnati at that number, knowing that you have to give Jamar Chase something. So that gives the Chargers a lot of hope in terms of getting a guy like that. From a tight end perspective, this is from Hey BR. What's the Chargers' biggest need outside of wide receiver this offseason? Seems like tight end is a need, but the tight ends they had last season were decent. Where do you fall in line as far as tight ends are concerned?
It's a good draft.
It's a good draft for it, right?
Really good draft.
Free agency, not so much.
No, there's no one in free. I think Coughlin's like the number one guy in free agency. So now there are some rumors that George Kittle may be made available. So there's always the trade market. And obviously Kittle is like your prototypical Jim Harbaugh, Joe Hortiz style tight end, right? Someone that can block effectively, but is also an incredible receiver downfield. Those guys are hard to find. So you happen to have two of them in the draft. You have, Tyler Warren will not be there at 22. No. We'll see if Colston Loveland is.
That's where DJ has him mocked now to the Chargers.
Yeah, and so you see that, and it's funny because he always points out, the top 50 are how I value guys based on, those are my evaluations. When I watched film and I put my board together, this is my board, 1 through 50. The mock draft is what I think teams will do, like what their needs are, how their front office operates, the positions they invest in the first round, those sort of things. So he's got Colston Loveland as his number 7 player that he's evaluated, and yet he's got him going all the way down at 22.
Wow.
And to me, the situation in Vegas doesn't help the Chargers out. Like, I think when you see, and neither of these guys, they're both really, really good. They're not Brock Bowers. Nobody is. That's why we were talking about him 2 years ago before the draft. But I think you saw that production and what a tight end can do, even on an offense that didn't have a running game, that didn't have a quarterback, that had a leaky offensive line, that really had Jacoby Myers and nobody. And here's Brock Bowers going for 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns and breaking records all over the place. And that's the sort of vision general managers can have for those two. Now, you look, kind of coming out of Senior Bowl, and you're starting to feel pretty good about that group. I know Mason Taylor's got a ton of buzz right now, so you could, if neither of those guys makes it to you in the first round, I think you can realistically, as I'm kind of looking through it now, Gunnar Helm, Elijah Arroyo, they're all like, it's a deep class down to even Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, Ferguson from Oregon. I'm looking at this. I mean, how many guys is that? That's 6 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 guys. So if it's not Loveland, but I think to the point that the person is Who was it that's asking the question?
It was
whatever.
Hey, BR.
Okay, that you're making is, I think it's a position that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Listen, Will Dissly
Fantastic year.
had a fantastic year.
Awesome year.
Probably thought he wasn't going to catch the ball as much as he did. Hayden Hurst had unfortunate injury luck. We had a question about Stone Smart in here, and we may as well just get to it now as we're on the subject of tight end. Fernie Jr., should we expect to see more of Stone Smart?
I hope so.
I hope so as well.
Yeah, he's been a developmental player since he arrived. He's a quarterback, on Old Dominion. So you're talking about someone that's continuing to understand the position, learn the position. I love Stone Smart when he's on the field, man. He's an exceptional receiver. He's got crazy athleticism. And, another year with this coaching staff, Coach Bischoff and, Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, I think you're talking about continuing to build up your blocking ability and to have that sort of athleticism, as that third tight end, with Dissly and if whoever that draft pick is going to be and Smart, I think that's a really good tight end room.
Yeah. This is our guy, Sean Parmenter. Where do you think the priority for the roster is this offseason? Draft or free agency? Who are the highest priority internal free agents? Thanks, fellas. Well, both are going to be equally weighted in terms of draft or free agency. Internal, there's a ton of guys. There's a ton of guys who are on one-year deals. I think J.K. Dobbins is somebody we have to look at strongly. A guy like Elijah Molden. Is Denzel free agent? Yeah, Denzel. I mean, guys who made immediate impacts, really impactful players in Jim Harbaugh's first year that are going to be unrestricted free agents. And as far as the draft is concerned, I mean, gosh, you saw what happened in the 5th round last year. Getting Alt and McConkey in the first 2 picks. I mean, what Joe Hortiz did, just, you mirror that to this year. There's going to be tons of guys that they draft that will make immediate contributions. So, both are very important.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, they're going to have a lot more picks this year. I think they're, based on the comp formula, it looks like they're going to have 10. So you're going to have more picks than you had last year. Not only did they draft great players, but they maneuvered the board perfectly. They decided that it wasn't worth sliding back. Took Alt. He's top 10 tackle in the league now after a rookie season, and you pair him with Slater, and now you've got your foundation there. And then they're able to move up in the 2nd round to make sure they didn't, and it's just 3 picks, but you're willing to give up a 5 to go up the 3 or at least swap and, lose 37 spots there. And obviously we saw it in action, in New England and what Ladd was able to do. So it's clearly a front office with Joe Hortiz and Chad Alexander and that whole crew, and James McPherson and Kevin Kelly, and they're just so good at what they do and evaluating talent. So, you're Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still, starter, Joe Alt, starter, Ladd McConkey, starter. Don't know what Junior could have been because of the injury, unfortunately, but
maybe projected starter this year.
I'm assuming, this coming year, that's going to be a pretty special tandem. So to be able to pull that many starters out of one single draft, that's going to be a priority. As far as free agency goes, look, that they had last year was so different than this year because they were so far over the cap that they had to sign all of these one-year deals. That's all they could afford. That was the market that they were shopping in. So it's one-year prove-it deals for JK, for Puna, for Elijah, for, the trades that they made for Christian Fulton, like all these guys that were going to be up. So as far as like how I stack it, I think you just you look at what Coach said, and that's that he wants everyone to come back. He loves this team, and he thinks this team can win a Super Bowl. So I think they're going to try to bring a lot of those guys back. If I had to rank them, to me, look, it was the number 1 defense in the league, right? 17 points per game. So let's get some of those guys back. Let's get Puna Ford back. I think Elijah Molden, to me, he would be the next contract I did right after Slater, just because Derwin can be Derwin. When you have Alohi and Elijah out there, that's what allowed Derwin to have this all-pro season. So that's those would be my top. Oh, I did this with Popper last week too. Khalil Mack, obviously. He's a tone setter. He is an important part of this team. So, but those, I keep forgetting he's a free agent. So, it would be, that's where I would start. And then right behind that, I start to think about offense. And obviously, JK's at the top of that list.
So let's keep with the theme of the edge room, because this is a good question from Coach R.S. Lago. Let's get into the edge room. How do Hortiz and company address it? If it took Thule and Joey to get Garrett, would you do it? Is Khalil for sure coming back? This room sneakily became a big deal this offseason. So as far as the Myles Garrett thing, I think we discussed everybody's going to leave no stone unturned in terms of seeing if they can acquire Myles Garrett, and I'm sure that everybody will give their best shot to do so. I would want to give up Thule. Joey, again, you guys talked about it ad nauseum last week. And then is Khalil coming back? So this was the one room when Joe Hortiz and company decided to keep Joey and Khalil and add Bud, and we had Thule here. That was the most set of any position group. Yeah. Now it's a little bit in flux. How do you think they do address this?
Draft, I think, is possible. Depending, it's a deep edge draft, so you could end up, it's a good offensive. I shouldn't say it's not like last year when it came to tackles, but it's a solid offensive line.
They
draft.
got the guy at tackle last year.
But I just mean in terms of you saw what happened last year in the draft when tackles were evaluated to be high-level tackles. You'll get 6 or 7 of them off the board. So I'm just doing the calculus of if you assume Abdul Carter is going to be the number 1, number 2, or number 3 pick overall, you get behind him and you have Pierce from Tennessee and Michael Williams from Georgia and Shamar Stewart from A&M. And then I think the one interesting player that if he's there, if you're sitting there and there's, Tyler Booker, the just anchor of that Alabama offensive line, the interior offensive lineman, if there's Colston Loveland, if there's, let's say Genty slips to you. Let's say Genty's sitting there.
That's a conversation.
But if Mike Green is there, after that Senior Bowl week, that's the kind of that's what's going to be interesting about the draft, because of some of these position groups are deep, where you could end up getting a guy that this regime, this front office may have, at like number 11 or number 12, and all of a sudden you're staring at him at 22 and you're like, oh, wow, we've got really good problem here because we've got great. And then that's where positional value can come in, is like, as much as you love the idea of putting Colston Loveland with Herbert, it's like, yeah, but this is an edge. We can probably, and that goes to what we discussed last year when people were freaking out that they didn't take Malik Neighbors and they took Alt. And it's like, okay, it's not just Joe Alt. It's Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey versus Malik Neighbors and who did Kingsley Suamatiala.
Exactly.
That's what you have to take the tackle there because of how quickly they're going to go off the board. So that's kind of to speak to the edge room. Yeah, I think, look, something's got to be done with Joey's contract. What it is, I don't know. I think they want Khalil back. I think he would have retired if he didn't think the Chargers wanted him back. I don't get the sense he wants to uproot his family and go somewhere for a year to chase a Super Bowl. I think he thinks he can win it here, and that's why he's going to play another year. So I think he'll be back, and I'm excited about the future for Thule. I think I still fully believe that he's going to be a great player at that position.
Let's go to Antonio Gates should be in the Hall of Fame, Urban Champion 76. Yeah, we agree with that.
100%, and he will be.
Hopefully that's going to happen.
He'll get in this year.
Why trade for an aging receiver when we know Hortiz is going to find talent in the draft? Seems like a move in the opposite direction after getting out of the Keenan and Mike contracts. That's another thing that I wanted to pose to you, is that it's a pretty good wide receiver class too.
It's okay.
It's probably not what it was last year, but you can get some talent maybe in the second, third round.
Sure.
Would you go down that route of, hey, let's get maybe a transitional veteran that with a couple years left on their deal, and then draft another guy?
So you're saying like T. Higgins not available, DK not available, these guys that are 25, 26. Like, to me, it's because it's a known commodity. Like, we didn't.
We've talked about too many. We've talked about Olave. We've talked about Garrett Wilson. We don't know what's going to happen in New York.
Exactly.
With Devontae Adams. Like, there's a lot of other moving parts that go beyond just T. Higgins. T. Higgins is the belle of the ball, right? Everybody wants T. But if you don't get him, there may be other avenues to maybe get a veteran maybe on a shorter-term deal while drafting another young wide receiver. Yeah,
and so to answer the question, it's why do you do it? Because it's known. You know what you're getting.
Yeah.
When you trade for DK Metcalf, or you commit all this money to T. Higgins, or like you said, let's say Garrett Wilson becomes available. They want pick 22 for Garrett Wilson. Take it. It's yours. Sign him to a $30 million a year deal. I'm done. Absolutely. So I just don't think they'll do it. But so, yeah, that's why. Because you know what you're getting. You know what you have at quarterback. You know what you have at tackle. and that player can be productive, and it's worth, the draft asset plus the actual salary capital that you commit. So that's why you would do it. But yeah, it's a great point, that you're making, is it's not just 2 or 3 guys. As free agency shakes out, as as teams have to figure out how to get cap compliant, all of that's going to happen as soon as the Super Bowl is over. All those gears are going to start turning.
We're going to be right in the center of it at the Combine,
yes,
when these conversations start to take
exactly
place.
Right.
And we're going to be having a lot more, I think, questions out there as to what rosters are going to look like and who's going to be in the mix for what respective team. This is a couple of questions I can combine here. Jeff, what's more important for year 2, interior offensive line or interior defensive line? What positions are better sourced through the draft versus free agency? Example, rookie, wide receiver, proven vet. We talked about that. And then what's the biggest change we need to make to improve our run game? This is from Alex. So interior offensive line is a kind of a group, let's say, that we think that they are going to upgrade probably in both free agency and the draft. And with that, I think that's going to improve the run game.
Yeah, it's a good year in free agency for interior linemen. There's a lot of them out there, a lot of young guys out there. Trey Smith, the head of it, and we talked about, you talk about this ad nauseum, like, hey, you get one of the best interior linemen in the league and you take him away from the Chiefs. And that's a win-win. So, that's the kind of thing you're talking about in free agency. Draft, absolutely. I think Trey did a great job of trying to make that transition from tackle to guard, but Popper made the great point. It's like, if you're a $9 million tackle, that's great value for the team. When you're a $9 million guard, that's a different deal. So that's kind of how that whole thing shakes out. What do I think is more important? I'll just echo something that I said earlier last week, and that's, sorry, Jesse Minter, you're too good. You're really good at what you do. So if you're telling me where I'm gonna where I'm gonna have to invest in, I trust that whatever we give Jesse Minter, he's going to figure out, because anything that was dropped in his lap worked. Whether that was Marcus May 3 days later, Eddie Jackson 2 days later, just Puna and Tier Tart, and just think about Denzel Perriman, all of these players that just showed up. But really, you think about the practice squad guys and what Eli Apple, 40 snaps in Cleveland, that's
crazy, yeah.
So to me, it's like, let's give Greg some horses, and let's just say, hey, Jesse, just
do what you do.
Go figure it out.
Go
man.
do what you do.
Go cook.
Speaking of that, Riley Steele, realistic expectations for Dayon, Tarheeb, and Cam Hart for next year, and then their career in general. And it goes to the point, you listed a lot of veterans, but just the player development from these rookies and what they did. I mean, realistic expectations, they're going to continue to be starters, and you hope that Tarheeb and Cam Hart are high-level quarters for the next couple of years.
So, I think people that, when you just watch the games, you see how they perform, right? But then when you kind of, when we're here and you're around, you can kind of dig in a little bit deeper, and you can't minimize the impact that Denzel had on Dayon. Those two were thick as thieves, and that's where those conversations come in of, can you bring Denzel back? What's the number? What's it worth if maybe he's now the third guy and you're really playing dime a lot, and Derwin's your dime backer and he's playing slot and a lot, and you have Junior and Dan. So those are the sort of conversations that get real tricky when it's Ed McGuire and Joe, and they're trying to figure out how to spend all this money and make sure it all fits together. But yeah, look, I think, they put sort of, Dayon in there with the two rookie corners. So I think it's two separate conversations, right? I think is Dayon and Junior going forward as, a third-year guy and a second-year guy, but essentially two second-year guys. And then are you comfortable with two rookie corners out there? And so it'll be interesting. I think Christian Fulton played well before he kind of got dinged up. I think it'd be great to have him back.
And Zon's a free agent, and we don't. He was hurt all this year.
He was.
We didn't have a chance to really see him in this system.
Yeah. So, and now with Fuller coming in to be the safeties coach, he was Asante's DC in Florida when they were playing at a really high level. So we'll see how that affects. And that's the other thing that can't be minimized, is that Chris O'Leary did an unbelievable job with the safeties. Yeah. So, now he's going to be a DC at Western Michigan.
Yeah, wish him well.
Absolutely. So, but Coach Klink has been unbelievable with these corners, and that's something that I think people have to. I shouldn't say it that way. that's something that I'm excited about. Is it's clear these coaches are exceptional. It's not just Coach Harbaugh. It's not just Greg Roman and Jesse Minter. These position coaches have done a heck of a job in developing talent on both sides of the ball at every single position group. We were talking about Will Dissly and Coach Bischoff, and you're talking about a guy that's just essentially been a blocking tight end, catch a couple passes here and there, and that's what you end up getting out of them. Same thing with Dev and Coach Hardwick on that offensive line and all those moving pieces and the new pieces you had to drop in there. And that's why whatever they do, it feels so different, from what kind of it had felt like moving forward. You just feel like, man, these coaches really know how to coach, and whatever you drop in there is gonna work.
Just to piggyback off of that, and I'm not saying anybody's going to take a hometown discount, but all these veterans that have their contract up, guys who got to experience what this first year with Coach Harbaugh was like, they want to be back. They'd love to be back. And you hope that plays into their decision-making in addition to the money. Because, listen, you don't play this game for a long time. You want to get paid, and you want to be somewhere where you're appreciated. But I do think if all things equal, you may get the edge here because of what happened this past year.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there with the last part, Chris. I think that's just, if you have a good organization and a good, from top to bottom, when things are close, they want to stay.
Yep.
And you can't expect them to stay if things aren't close. Because, again, it's too violent a game. Your career's too short. Things can happen any given week that could end it all, and now you're looking for your next career at 28. So get as much money as you possibly can, and then you just hope, all right, that's what you got out there on the market. Here's what we're offering. It's close, and that's when you hope they're like, yeah, I love it here. Let's stick around. Yeah. And tax me 13% from the state. Thanks a lot, California.
Pay no mind to the taxes, guys. Yeah. Griffin Lee, what do the Chargers need to do to get into this Chiefs, Ravens, Bills category? Do you guys see that happening this coming season? Time to start beating teams that you're supposed to lose to. Okay. So I think after that first Monday night game against the Ravens, you and I talked on this pod to say, hey, you know what? This is kind of where you're striving to get to. And you hope year 2 of Coach Harbaugh is the year where you start to put yourself in that conversation. Because to me, after that first game, it was clear to me that they were still a rung behind the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs, even though you play the Chiefs so closely every single year. But is this the year that they can put themselves into that conversation where they're actually competing, where Justin Herbert is in the divisional round of the playoffs playing against Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen?
Yeah, so look at those 3 teams, right? Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. What do they all have in common? Their quarterback and their head coach have been together their entire careers. Like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes have played for one head coach their entire career. And I know Josh Allen has kind of had a bit of a revolving door at OC.
But McDermott's been there since his rookie year.
Exactly. So it's kind of, that's what we're talking about, is finally getting Justin Herbert some continuity, and not, bringing in Greg Roman and saying, hey, Greg, sorry, but Mike Williams is being released and we're trading Keenan and you need to put a tackle at guard and we're signing Bradley Bozeman as your center and we're crossing our fingers on JK and we got a low money deal on Gus. Like, people that are taking shots at Roman, I'm like, do you not remember what this thing looked like to get started? How they're just trying to put tape on these leaks and crossing their fingers, and he made it sing. I know it was predominantly a defensive-driven team this season with 17.5 points allowed per game, but at the same time, you started to see some rhythm. It got sideways on him in that game against the Texans, but I think it exposed, just to maybe put more of a fine point on it to answer the question, I think what your limitations are, what your weaknesses are exposed in the playoffs. There's a reason why that's a cliche. So you saw it. What you saw in Houston is what will be addressed. And moving forward, I think this last year's team will be, on paper, the least talented team that we'll see for the next half decade. It's that this team is only going to be better on paper moving forward because of kind of what they inherited cap-wise and draft-wise.
Yeah. OXJ Sizzle.
Oh, I love that guy.
Yeah, right? In what world do we address both interior offensive line and wide receiver needs this offseason? And then the second part, confidence level if Joey Bosa stays 1 to 10. I mean, I think they're going to address both of
Yeah.
them. They're going to address both of them, and this goes with another. We have so many questions, so let me just put this one into LAFC. Daniel, do you expect the Chargers to splash on a premium free agent?
Yes.
I think that they will will attempt to make a couple splashes.
I think multiple.
Yeah.
Yes, I would just answer that with multiple. Yeah. I think you're talking. Now, look, do you think the number one guard on the market is a splash? No, but it is. So I think they'll probably spend on a receiver, spend on a guard. I could see them spending on. I'm trying to think of who's out there. The edge is interesting, depending on what they do with Khalil and Joey at $36 million, how they deal with that. You've got some edge talent out there as well in free agency. So yes, I envision that this team's going to spend money.
Hashish Jackson, what's the most realistic outcome this free agency? Will the Chargers make a big splash signing with DK? We talked about DK,
Kinda
Myles,
got that
Garrett. Let's see. A lot of DK. People want DK, by the way.
Yeah, look, I would too. And you're reuniting him with his wide receiver coach, and you saw what a great job Sanjay Lal did, the wide receivers coach here, who came down from Seattle, who was there when DK was drafted. And there's a reason why DK slipped to the second round, because they were like, okay, he does one thing. You can take away the one thing you do and make you do other things. And Coach Lal was able to coach him up and make him a more complete receiver and a serious threat. So I could totally see DK wanting to reunite with him. And Sanjay and Coach Lal wanting to have him down here. I'd be excited about that too. I still, just because DK's had some injury concerns, I would still, if I could rank them, I'd like to have T1, and then DK would be like right behind that.
CMAC game day. What is your opinion of the impact of Ben Herbert? Less injuries, more gas in the tank in the fourth quarter. Will we see better results once Ben has a full year to work with the team? I thought as the season went on, you saw fewer and fewer injuries. I thought that they had a pretty much a full complement of guys towards the back half of the year. I thought Ben Herbert was awesome.
Yeah, I echo that. I don't need to add to that. He's great. You never saw this team get run off the field late. You didn't see them give up leads late. This was a team that closed games out, that played better in the fourth quarter than they did in the first. And so I think everything that he preached and everything that we talked about, look, guys are going to get hurt. Every single team has guys that get hurt. It's a violent game.
Impossible not
to.
Do you remember when we spoke with him and he talked about how, hey, listen, the way I talked to Joey and Khalil going to be a little different than how I talked to a rookie at the beginning. And I just think of the strides the rookie class made.
Yeah.
Ben Herbert played a big role in that. When you talk about Alt and McConkey and the two corners, to have that guy with you at the beginning of your NFL career, I think speaks volumes.
Yeah, look, it's, I think in terms of like Asante and, some of the longer term injuries, like those are injuries. Like that's not what we're talking about. It's like our guys missing games with soft tissue, with groins, with hammies, with things like that. And are they out for an extended period of time? And I just felt like we did not have much of that at all. And that's a tribute to. And look, beyond what we're talking about, what people are asking via social media and what we're talking about on the pod, just ask the players. They love them, man.
Yep.
They freaking love them. So,
Antonio GN, will the Chargers host a game in Brazil? And there was another question about, would you rather go to Brazil or London? I don't know what's on the horizon internationally, but it would be fun to go to Brazil or London or Germany or Spain or Australia.
Yeah, I think the way it lines up, just in terms of the teams they've already announced. Look, if I had to guess, get your passport. I think we're going somewhere. And if I had to guess where, I think it's Brazil. I think it lines up. The teams on the East Coast have, a much easier – talking about, and I know you can go over the polls, so it's not as drastic as it's made out to be. But, you can't minimize how much easier it is to get to London from New York and the Eastern Seaboard than it is from L.A. So, Brazil is pretty much equal for almost everybody. You're talking about 11, 12 hours from here and 11, 12 hours from anywhere else because it's just straight shot down. So where would I like to go? Yes. I like going to those places. Now, Brazil, Sao Paulo's got some pretty sweet waves. So it's I got some friends who work with Fuwax, the famous surf wax brand that's located in.
We're doing a Matt Money Smith surfing segment in Brazil if it happens.
So
right?
So selfishly, I would love to get down there and hopefully connect with some people.
You answer questions from aboard.
Yeah, that will paddle out with me so I don't get murdered because they are very violent about their waves and who has rights to waves and who drops in on who. So I would have to make sure I find the right chaperones to paddle out with, and they can tell me when I can go and I can go have some fun. So, yeah, selfishly, that's what I'd like to do.
Jake from Australia wants the Chargers to go to Melbourne to play the Rams in 2026. I'd like to go to Australia, too.
Again. What do they have in Australia? They have waves in Melbourne. So yeah, I would absolutely love that. Sign me up. I'm not the guy. Look, I'm not the guy that's got to get out there and play and adjust to the timing and figure out how to get my body right when I'm, Brazil. And that's the other thing about Brazil is, in terms of the players, like time zone wise, you're great, And it's if it's October, I mean, it's peak like spring to summer season down there. It's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, let's go.
All right, last one, because we got to go. We appreciate all the questions. Try to get as many as possible. Athier, if Herbert becomes the 7th quarterback in NFL history to win MVP and Super Bowl MVP same season, are you nervous as a GM? And what does the extension look like?
For Herbert?
For Herbert. He's locked in, Athier.
I don't know. I don't care. Whatever, $1 billion?
He's hoisted
whatever,
Lombardi.
man. He's MVP of the league and Super Bowl MVP. Yeah, what do you want? I mean, that's the nice thing about Justin's contract that I think people – and it's look what Patrick Mahomes has done, when he signed that $600 million deal is it became the bank of Mahomes. Anytime they had to withdraw money to sign a player, they were able to – restructure. Here's some more signing bonus, Patrick. Here's a couple more years on the back end, and now we can lower your number and pull that money out and pay fill in the blank or acquire this player. And that's the one nice thing about having a player that's operating at that level where you give them that massive of a contract that you can play with, and you can sort of take from here and push this over there, and now we've got an extra $20 million. So, he just signed it. He just started that deal. So
we're good. We're good for a little bit.
It's going to take a year. Maybe it's going to take at least 2 more years before they can really kind of get their hands into that thing.
There was one question about putting a bug in Coach Harbaugh's ear to get Mason Graham or McMillan from Servite. I think they're both going to go in the top 10.
Top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. T-Mac's
two guys from Servite, man.
Yeah. T-Mac is like a T. Higgins. That's sort of the same idea. Mason Graham will go top 7. A couple Servite guys, huh?
All right, this is the last one. Outside of Chargers free agency, who are 3 realistic players that you guys would like to see on the team and why? We think we mentioned T. Higgins. That'd be one.
Wow. Let's see. So who would I like to see and why? Reed, the corner. That'd be nice. Wouldn't mind that. The Jets corner. We already talked about T. Higgins. Here, let me just pull up so I can just look at teams, and that's all I want to do. All right, so Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, Cowboys, Giants. Oh, you have the guard from Indianapolis, or I already said Trey Smith. So, yeah, Trey Smith, guard, T. Higgins wide receiver, Reed, corner. There you go. How's that?
Done.
I
think that'd be a successful offseason.
And depending on how things go with Khalil and Joey, maybe Hassan Reddick, as an edge.
Oh.
That's another one that's going to be available. Who else is a free agent as I'm looking at this? Yeah, that works, right?
Good way to end it. What's your score Sunday?
It's going to be Chiefs by what's the spread? 1.5. So it'll be Chiefs by 2.
Half a point.
They'll be 2. They'll win by 2. They'll be down 1 in the final minute, and there's going to be a PI or an offsides free play. Lined up in the neutral zone. Mahomes finds, Hollywood Brown downfield to set up Bucker for the game winner.
All we know is Bucker's going to end it with the game-winning field goal, right?
Just, whatever. Just give me my wings, my Frank's Red Hot chicken dip with my chips. That little recipe on the back of the Frank's Red Hot that I make every year for the Super Bowl. It's like 7,000 calories and worth every freaking one of them. So that's all I care about.
And the best thing for Chargers fans is after the game, everybody's 0-0 again.
Exactly right.
We start over.
Back to the next one.
Combine in a couple of weeks. We did it right last year, and it's gonna be fun this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Can't wait for it.
It's going to be great. Looking forward to it. Hopefully just kind of repeat exactly what we did last year with all our friends down there. So looking forward to that for sure.
Cool. All right. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. We'll see you next week.